this is one of my favorite topics actually, because I think influencers sometimes come in a second, you don't even know, and sometimes come a lifetime. And when I speak, a lot of times I talk about my grandfather, him, my grandmother, my mom, my aunt were from Kiev, and they immigrated to Canada years ago. And when I was 5, he took me for walks in the park in Montreal. And one day I asked him, I call him Zeta, how do you know all these people? Which is obviously where I got that DNA, I think. And he said, "Well, you see that guy?" He literally pointed. See that guy over there? And one day I looked at him, and I smiled at him, and he looked up and he smiled at me, and then he came over, and we started talking. And then another person saw us smiling and laughing and came over also. And I'm thinking as a 5-year-old, this is great. Life's simple. All I gotta do is smile. I remember having that thought in a weird way. And
Yeah.
then you get older, you start complicating it, but then you also realize you don't have to complicate it, even a smile. And as a doctor, you would know even a smile physiologically, psychologically can change how a person feels. So that was one of many influences for me, and you probably have many too, positive or negative, depending on how we react. Can you share two or three people that have been influenced in your life?
Yeah. I'm sure, no surprise, my dad has been such a huge influence on me in so many ways. I think about even talking to you now, one of the, I used to make rounds with him in the hospital. So he had a private practice growing up, and he was like that old time doctor. He would make rounds in the morning and then go see patients and then go back to the hospital and make rounds at night. And so we never like had dinner together. It wasn't like a normal like family thing. He was late. He would come home late and we would see him before we went to bed, maybe, maybe not. But so on the weekends, he would go make rounds at the hospital. And he's like, who wants to go? And I'm like, me,
That's
And
cool.
and I would just always hang out with him. And I remember I must have been like 7 years old. We went to a patient's room, first patient's room, and he sat down on the bed. And he got really close and he held the woman's hand. And he said, "How you doing today?" And I just remember being like, wow,
Wow. Yeah.
you're sitting on the bed and the dynamic of all of it. And he said, if you sit down, if you look someone in the eyes, you hold their hand, they know that you're there with them. And instead of standing over the bed and talking down at them, he listen, he's still alive. I got to tell you about him in a second, but um, he was always aware of the human behind the disease. And I just learned so much from him about how to look at people. Um, he was running an oncology clinic center, and he had a Reiki master and making rounds and a psychologist and a nutritionist.
Wow. Ahead
He's
of its
like,
time for sure.
I'm like, why do you have a Reiki master? Do you even know what that was? Like, I'm in college. I knew what Reiki was. I was a dancer, like, what do you know? And he said, I have no idea what it is, but it really helps the patients. And I really thought like that's just the way it should be.
100%.
And he really, in so many ways, just has constantly had an impact and constantly, like behind the scenes, people think, oh, your dad must have helped you. My dad, no, 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 no. Your choice, you do it. You figure it out. I launched this company. It was like, hey, dad, do you want to support me? He's like, nah, your thing. Knock yourself out. You know what I mean? There was a lot of tough love, no enabling. your decision, your choice, go make it happen. If you fail, it's on you. If you succeed, I am going to cheer you either way. But it's on your terms, not on mine. And as much as I've resented that at times, like, come on, Dad, invest in the company. He wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. And I think that that has made me tougher in a career that he had to be a little tough. It made me really believe in the potential and the possibility. So he retired. He's 83 years old. And when you ask him, like, what would you have done if you weren't, oh, you'll love this, if you weren't an oncologist? And he'd say, I wanted to be a professional athlete.
There you
So
go.
in his,
Ala dancer. There's the connection to the dancer too, by the way.
yes,
Um,
yes, oh yes. And he, in his retirement, decided to start competing in barefoot water skiing in the masters division because who at 80 years old is actually competing? I mean, and he's travels and he does really well. He's 83 years old. He's had his knees replaced. He doesn't care. He was barefoot water skiing this morning in a dry suit.
Really?
Yes. When people, ask me, how do you live? Like my whole thing and this whole idea, you live from the heart. Whatever it is that makes you feel alive and vital and vibrant and with purpose and passion and love and all of it, live from the heart. I learned that from my dad, like early on. He is so crazy though, the things that he does.
No, well, that's amazing. Barefoot water, man. Well, he's awesome. Can you name another influencer?
Yeah. I think about his mother, who was a very traditional woman. She was the wife of a doctor. And um, she taught she taught deaf children, and
Wow.
she was very interesting. I learned from her how to present yourself and how to speak to people when they might not understand what you're saying, and how to communicate to anybody, no matter who it is. So, the wife of the doctor's job in her mind was to understand and communicate with people. So, I have to tell you, the office was connected to the house. So, she was in the kitchen, but right through that door was the office. So when I was growing up and she would babysit, I'd be running up and down the hallway in the office. I did my first eye exam at like 3. I learned the alphabet at 3 by my grandmother, the teacher, because I wanted to help my grandpa with the patients. It was just that sort of situation. And she said to me, speak to people as if they can't hear you. And when people ask me, oh, because I had a little bit of a New Jersey accent for a while, they would say, how did you drop your accent? When I entered the world and I was in theater, but talking to my grandmother, I learned how to speak so people could read my lips, people could understand me, people could hear what I'm saying, and make what you say not complicated but
Right.
worthy of having someone listen. And her daughter, my father's sister, oh my God, this makes me cry. She had rheumatic fever as a child. She almost died at 12. There wasn't antibiotics. She was on aspirin therapy. When she was 70 years old, I was in my fellowship and she was swimming at our lake and went into fulminant pulmonary edema and almost died. And she had rheumatic heart disease. And this is what it was for me being in this family. I got the call, you're the cardiologist, you got to come take over. And they brought her to New York, they're in New Jersey, to my hospital. The doctors who were teaching me became her doctors until I graduated. and then I became her doctor. Now, whether or not that's morally or ethically okay was irrelevant. My father did not trust anyone but me. And he knew that if I didn't know somebody, I was going to call somebody smarter to come help.
Hmm.
And I took care of my aunt. She got sick really during COVID, and she didn't die of heart disease. I remember saying to myself, if I keep her alive till 80, it will be a success. And she lived past that and did not die of heart disease. Um, but she taught me so much of what it felt like to be a cardiac patient, and what it looked like to have just strength and discipline and bravery to be so sick and to fight for your life by going to exercise every day. And she exercised, I mean, she was amazing. And there was so many times she was in the hospital, in my hospital, and I would walk in her room and be like, I am so exhausted. Like I haven't slept for 2 days in this fellowship. And she'd be like, pull yourself together. Like, we had a truly special relationship. And talk about having gratitude. I got to take care of her. It was just, I can't explain it. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
you don't have to explain it, you can feel it, which is even more important. And yeah, we all have to be grateful for that and for people that do influence us along the way. And I've always said with others that what we should get out of that is that we're also influencing people ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't even know it, but it's a choice to be positive or negative, and why not be positive and why not give a piece of your heart? You're not, there's enough love to go around, and it gets bigger and bigger. It doesn't get smaller when you share it. And I think we just need to do that more. And I'd love to have another conversation about how the heart retains things with the cells it has and everything. I'd love to do that, but thank you for sharing about them. Special treat to hear you talk about it. Thanks.
Thank you.